Welcome to episode 10 of the OVGA podcast. Myself, Ibrahim, Sanford, and Dan. For today, we have a quite an interesting topic. We thought we'll make it fun for episode 10. So we're talking about sexy and not so sexy box art. Um, well, before we get into that, make sure to follow us on YouTube, hit us a like, and follow our Facebook group, Original Video Game Art Collectors, and check out our website, originalvideogameart.com. Over to you, Dan.
Oh,
Start us
good.
off.
Well, first, hey, good to see you guys. Welcome back.
Good to see you. Yes. It's been a minute, and nice to get back in the saddle here and kick off another episode. So we're going to talk about sexy and not so sexy box art, but I think first we're going to just kind of kick it around and talk about upcoming auctions and so on. So we'll segue back into the topic, in a few minutes once we've done that.
Sure. Well, I can be the one to go ahead and throw up a screen share here, and so, um, we've a lot of times our focus on artwork has been the things that have been in signatures, and we're starting to see, a number of art pieces show up in other auctions. So one of the ones that's coming up in October. I think it's the Saturday, October 19th session of an anime auction. So it's like a 4-day auction, 2,000 pieces in the Saturday floor session. And let me see if I can get the screen share going. Let's see. Here we go. Alrighty. So we've got a painted piece from the Super Mario Brothers film, right? So this is a 1993 movie. And so, I mean, it's kind of funny, right? I shared it to the OVGA Twitter account. I shared it in the Facebook game group, and kind of both times it garnered quite a bit of discussion, which is a bit of a proxy for what I think the interest could be in the piece. But anyway, this is the first one we're going to preview. Over to you guys.
Well, I think it looks exactly like the game. It reminds me of a specific level in the game. I remember riding that mattress with my pipe wrench out and being shot at with fireballs with a giant green alien in the background. So I think it's, absolutely iconic of the game.
That's the bonus.
And
That's the bonus level, I think.
that's the bonus level. Yeah, you had to go down the pipe
The warp
warp
pipes,
and input the code, and
Yeah.
Look, I mean, it's nicely rendered. Like the artist did a nice job in a way, but it's just such a cluster in terms of the content, right? Like we're riding a mattress. We've got a fucking, I don't even know what that is in the background. Like, what is that green alien in the back? I haven't watched the movie, but I don't think any of that matters. Like the image is rendered well, the subject matter is a cluster, but at the end of the day, it's a cluster that's a known part of the history of Mario, and it was a big budget thing at the time. I mean, the movie was like a $50 million budget back in the early '90s, so probably the equivalent of like a, I don't know, $200 million budget today. So it was anticipated to be a huge blockbuster, and it just fell flat. And we see that actually in that on the reverse of the piece, like another one of Heritage's pictures show all the people that signed off on this lovely image.
Yeah.
There's 4 separate signatures on there, like 4 approvals where somebody signed it, dated it, and put okay. Yes, this is exactly the image we want to represent the movie. This is it. Yes. 4 people did that.
So what's funny is
Yeah.
I think it probably really does represent the movie. The movie is just so distorted from the game, right? Which is, I think, what most shocked me about posting this and seeing the discussion is realizing the love that exists for the movie. I've never watched it. I doubt that I will. Right? I kind of know it's like poked at as being really bad, but like I think there's that subset of people that love it because it's bad and have decided that's what they want to do.
So
It's
bad
it's got a
so
bit
bad
of
it's
a
good.
yeah, it's got a
little
bit of a cult following. But yeah, I mean, it's not the best image, but I mean it represents the movie, so that's
I
what it
mean,
is.
I,
And
I, I think I think it's a cool image. It doesn't do
yeah,
anything for
um,
me. I don't want
I
to
mean,
buy it.
it's well rendered. I can't say
Yeah,
it's a cool image. I mean, that green thing in the background alone ruins it for me. You
I
know,
think
like
that's
what is
Isn't
that?
that Bowser, right?
If
Or
that's
King.
Bowser, then just you know the fuck. Pardon my French.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, for me, it's hard to love, but someone will love it. So the people, as we have discussed in the past, have paid good money for our predictions.
Yeah.
What's the prediction?
I think it. So one of the comparisons we brought up was the Mario 3 poster cover, right? The French Mario 3 kind of image, and that sold for 10 flat, probably more than a year ago. That's foreign, but looks more like the game. This is US, connected to the movie, weird cult following. It still kind of feels like it hits 10 and then slows down 10, 12 for me. But if it went 7, 8, fine. I would get it.
Mm-hmm.
I think yeah, you're probably spot on. I mean, I'd be anywhere between 8 and 12,000. It is faded because I mean, as looking at the poster that was for it, this is definitely faded. But yeah, I could see it going for 8, 10, 12, something like that. I don't see it, hitting more than that. If it does, then you know, shit happens. But I think 8.
You know, the other interesting comparison is the Mario squiggle thing that we talked about, because that's serial, relatively inconsequential, barely a Mario, mainly just a giant blue starburst, and that was 8 grand. You know, and
Mm.
then there was that other promotional serial piece that got 9 that had a lot of just blue polygon as well. And you know, I mean, if I compare to those, I mean, I'd much rather have this, to be honest. Um, so I want to say, like, I don't. The trouble I have predicting with this one is I don't know who the person amongst my contacts is that bids 20 grand on this. Like, I don't know who that person is, but I think there's a chance that that person exists. So I'm going to guess a wider range than you guys and say, yeah, it could be 8, but it could also be 20, or could it peak above that? I don't know. I have to have a wide range on this one because I think it is just a matter of who shows up with what wallet, because I can make an argument that it should only be 8, but I can also make an argument that it should be 30. So what happens on auction day, I don't know. I don't see it going for big money because it's too hokey, but at the same time I could easily see it going for, somewhere in the solid teens or whatever.
I think like one thing that I've thought about as I make estimates and things is like I don't like estimating too far beyond what I would actually pay for it, because you see
Yes.
these things where people are throwing out like, oh, this should be 2, 3 thousand, but that person themselves would not bid 2 or 3 thousand. Um,
100%. It's way too easy to spend someone else's money.
Yeah.
Now we do know there's a member of the group that has been tagged on this particular piece multiple times because I think they're known as liking the movie, and people are like, oh, you have to bid
Yeah, I
on
think they
this, and
collect
so
props from the movie.
and so like you get if you have two people that collect in that manner, yeah, maybe it pushes it, but what are their budgets? Who are they? Do they really do much artwork? Who knows? Second one we're going
Yeah.
to bring up. So this is, I think it's Saturday, October 19th in the 4-day anime auction on Heritage. Other piece that we're going to preview, and let me see here, is another Gary Winnick Maniac Mansion piece. Um, and so there's been a few of these. I kind of forget the range they sell in.
Kind of
Three
1500-ish.
Okay, 1,500 to 3 to 5, somewhere in there. I think depending on the
No, no, not
really
not a lot of
no.
3 to 1500-ish. Yeah.
Okay,
The ones
okay,
that went for more were
Adventure Island?
other titles. No, the
No, Monkey Island? What was it?
yeah,
Treasure
Monkey
Island?
Island, Monkey Island
yeah.
went for 7, and
I th-
um, I don't
Yeah,
You go ahead and talk, Sanford. I'm going to quickly check
yeah,
on
yeah. Check it.
comps, but
I
I
think there
don't
was
think any Maniac Mansions went for more than 1,500 ish. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think one went for three. We'll figure it out. So this is these are tightly rendered. They if you know the games and know the characters, I think they have the right resemblance and they're neat. But the question we've kind of had has been, well, what are they? What were they created for? Heritage often calls them promotional, which
Mm.
is a little weird, right? Because you never see them published, you never see them used for something, and so um, one little update I had emailed a bit with Gary on a related topic and kind of came back around and asked, what these were for. Um, and so I'm going to kind of I'm going to look at his response here for a second and rehash it a little bit. Um, So he says these typically have been used internally for character development or promotional purposes. In particular, many of these Maniac Mansion pieces were developed with the Lucas Animation Group in an attempt to promote a proposed series. Additionally, both Ken Macklin and I batted several of these back and forth at the time, some as pencil sketches, including a number I also took to final inks, while he created two as painted versions. And so, like, I've seen the images of the painted versions online, not at auction, but scans of transparencies or slides that existed somewhere. And so, I do think the really well rendered Maniac Mansion pieces they look good, but I think their connection to the game is pretty tenuous, right? They were looks like they were more proposed to be an animated series versus this is a promotional piece for the game back in 1987, which
And
for
you know, it makes sense when you look at it because if it was a concept piece, number one, it wouldn't be finished in inks like that. Number two, it wouldn't have the logo top left. Like just when you look at it as a concept slash development piece for a game, it doesn't really make sense. It doesn't really make sense. And you know, you've got this sort of perfect team shot with the house and stuff. Like it's just none of that is what you would be doing if you were trying to work out what the characters are going to be like for the game. So I think Gary's answer makes all kinds of sense and kind of helps us to close the loop on the questions we had in our mind around why did these things look this way. Lastly, you know, Sanford, to your point, there was one having done a search on HA that went for $3,000, one that went for 1,500, and one that went for 900. The one that went for $3,000 had a logo like that as well. So you know, I don't know if I think that sort of adds a little something when it's on the
Mhm.
piece like that. So you know, I guess we'll see. And you know, to your point though, you know, to the since it's used for promoting an animated series, there's probably more of these out there. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I think like I think price wise, right? Not to go too long on it. I think it's the same, right? 1,500, two. Somebody wants it three. Could be
Yeah,
$1,000. It's that same range.
yeah.
But if you like Maniac Mansion and you have a connection to it, they look good.
Why
It's
not?
not a bad.
Yeah.
There's rougher things that sell that are more official. Like you can get actual box prelims. But if you were entry level stepping in, this looks really good, even if it doesn't quite have the same grasp, or the same interest that direct to the game. So yeah,
Agreed. I mean, at the end of the day, 1, 2, 3 grand, you know, looks good, reminds you of your favorite game. Nothing wrong
yeah.
with that. Like, there's value there.
So I think and just keeping us moving. Last thing I'll kind of mention in this
Yep.
same November signature. So this is I think November 22nd, 23rd. I don't know if this is a Friday or Saturday piece yet. I don't think Heritage knows yet. There's also a Greg Winters Star Wars Rogue Squadron prelim. There's no image up yet, but that'll be coming. And then we're kind of separately noticing, right, they're putting a little more art into some of these showcase auctions. So October 3rd, there was an Atari one with about 8 pieces. We're filming today, October 5th. Not quite sure when we're going to get this episode live, but next Thursday, there's a Sega showcase that also has a few pieces. So we're seeing them put more entry level pieces into different auctions in different places. And we talked a little before the episode today, but it's just nice to see more pieces coming up more often. It's just kind of a healthy thing to see, even if they're not all in signatures. And so, with that, I think we should kind of transition on to our main topic of the day, and I'll kick it back to you, Dan.
Yeah, so yeah, sexy and not so sexy box art. So um, why chat about this? Well, in other types of collecting, most collectors being men, if an illustration's a little on the sexy side or whatever, sometimes that helps the price, sometimes that helps the interest. Men being men. Um, and so we got to thinking, well, what does that look like in games? Like, what titles would you even go after if that was your interest? Like, if you came in from somewhere else and that was kind of your focus, and maybe Ibrahim will have a story to share there in a minute. But if that was your focus, where would you look? What would you be interested in? What titles would you be looking at? And so we just started asking ourselves the question of, okay, well, to the extent there are sexy box art out there, what are they? What are the sexiest ones? And you know, at the end of the day, like, we'll go through and we'll share some of the titles we've identified, but it's shocking when you really look through with a critical eye those early Nintendo and Sega libraries, how few of the boxes even have an illustration of a woman at all. You can go through and like, if you pick a random sample of 50 boxes or 100 boxes, I don't know if 10 of them will even have an image of a woman, however demure, however off in the background. Like, for the most part, this was all marketed to 10, 12-year-old boys, and it was guns and explosions and big bare-chested heroes like Arnold Schwarzenegger types with massive guns. You see that,
Yeah.
but
And
any
so,
kind of sexy images, they're few and far between.
one thing I did is I went through the catalogs of NES, Super Nintendo, Genesis, as I almost did what I call like a thumbnail test, right? Like, I was kind of just going through small images of the boxes, and like, if I couldn't see it in this small thumbnail, like, I almost discounted it, right? Some of the exceptions start to become the sword and sorcery kind of games, right? Where you've got a male and female warriors with weapons and things like that. But, there might be a female warrior wearing a little less, but they're off to the side. They're half the size of the male character, just however the composition is. And so there might be a little something there, but it's it's an afterthought. And I think from a marketing perspective, they might have thought, okay, we only get away with the less clothed woman because it's small, she's a warrior, and it's on the side. Like, they weren't the focus. And so, I think we'll kind of go through, NES, Super Nintendo, Genesis, a couple top three, so to say, of those. But I can say we didn't really have an easy time getting to three on some of the biggest consoles. And from my own little anecdote, as I went through my own art collection, I don't have any box art that even gets close to becoming worth mentioning in this topic. Now, Ibrahim, I'll kick it to you. I know
You
you've got a
used
little bit of
to. You
used to.
used to
I guess I
though.
did, but
Well,
yeah,
I
over to
got
you,
it off your
buddy.
hands.
Yeah.
Story time, I think, Ibrahim. Why don't you tell us about your early days collecting?
Yeah, so I think it was soon after I bought my first piece, Space Ace.
How
I
soon, Ibrahim?
like probably a week afterwards. I started to make a list of like I think it was even before I picked up Space Ace. I made a list of different categories. So games I actually had as a kid that I'd love to have the box art for, and then I made a separate list of sexy box art or just things I find attractive. On that's that list I made. And then I was scouring the groups, getting to know people, and one of them was Lester and Sanford. I got in touch with Sanford. I can't remember the exact details, and started talking to him, and it's a terrible game. It's known as one of the worst games, but again, it has a cult following. But I love the image. You know, it's I find it attractive. You know, I was lured in, and you know, I loved it. So started messaging Sanford, and yeah, I was able to make a deal and get it off his hands.
So what's funny about this, unrelated to the artwork, right? But so we did this in late 2020, still kind of COVID times and things. And so like I boxed it up, I printed the shipping label, I brought it down to the front desk in my building, and FedEx, UPS, USPS, one of them eventually came and picked it up. It must have been USPS.
Yeah,
And then the tracking didn't update for 10 days. And
I
this is
think it
my
was a bit
first.
longer.
Oh yeah, and
It
yeah,
was like two to
Ibrahim
three weeks.
remembers,
I was going
and
crazy.
he's freaking out. He's like, what the fuck is going on? Like, can you go talk to someone? I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not gonna go like try to like find someone in the DC post office to figure out why it hasn't been scanned. But at the same time, I'm like, well, fuck. Am I? If it doesn't turn up, I'm out. I'm out. To cash in the painting on this, and so clearly it got there safely, and yeah, it's just
Yeah, it
funny
was
funny
during
memory of our
COVID.
first
Yeah,
first exchange. Yeah,
yeah, it was during COVID, and there was all that mail crisis backlog. But yeah, learned my lesson from then, and you know, only used FedEx or DHL. But yeah,
uh,
that's. I think that's the second piece I bought. Yeah, and I
yeah,
bought that before I even picked up my first piece, Space Ace.
yeah. So Dan, if we go into the realm of Ness box art, where are you taking
Yes,
us?
sir. Yes, sir. Well, yeah, Ness being, always my, go-to favorite console. There isn't a lot. It's a lot of side ancillary usages and whatever, but there are a couple interesting ones. Why don't we start with Venice Beach? It's an unlicensed title.
All right.
And so, here we've got a little bit of a pervy, up the chest perspective, where we're for no reasons related to gameplay. I don't think camera angles pointed straight up their bodies, so it's a little along that line. Certainly for the console, it's one of the sort of sexier looking images. um Not a lot to say about it. Two women in bikinis, okay.
Yeah.
um
Yeah, this is probably the highlight of the console box art. It only really gets less sexy from here.
well, I don't know about that. I mean, I think that depends on whether, like, if you're a guy listening to this podcast, and if if you're if you're an ass man, there might be one that you prefer. Why don't we move to that? Why don't we show Cool World?
Okay, give me a second here. All right, Cool
Right,
World.
so kind of cute, but yeah, it's animation, and I think the only reason they even get away with this is because of the fact that it's really just reusing the movie poster.
Yeah,
So I mean, it's a cute scene. There is some overt sexuality to it, but it's not.
But
You
what's
know,
even what I noticed when I was pulling the images here is, so this is the NES box art. They used the
yep.
same image for Super Nintendo, Game Boy. Here's Super Nintendo, same thing. But what you're going to notice when I show you the Amiga DOS, the more computer one, right? They don't distract you with all the tunes at the bottom, right?
It looks better, doesn't
You
it?
get the full figure, the focus is there. But if you're selling to kids, okay, let's throw some cartoons at
Let's
the
kit it
bottom and,
up.
and try to
yeah.
hide it. Um, and I didn't notice that until we're prepping for the topic, and you're like, God, that's so silly, right? Because you're like, oh, it's the same as the movie poster. No, I mean the movie poster is this one, right? Um, so, and again, from an original art perspective, that background is painted by a guy, Barry Jackson. But then this, I imagine the figure, it's separate, right? Whether it's
Mm-hmm.
a cell or it's two pieces. So even if you want to buy the artwork, you're not even really getting a full box art piece.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The next one on the list is also movie related, Roger Rabbit. So here, of course, we've got Jessica Vavavoom. Anyone who's watched the movie will remember the character. And, it's a service. I look at her waist, by the way. Holy cow. Like she's talk about, 36, 13, 36 on the, on the size chart there. Holy cow. I just kind of noticed that now. But yeah, I mean, it's a serviceable rendering of Jessica. Jessica's an overtly sexual character.
And
Okay.
I kind of think Cool World was too, right? Like I kind of think that the premise of both of these were kind of similar, right? Like the um, cartoons mixed with real world and the
Yeah,
characters' reactions to the female leads. I think, but I haven't watched Cool World. But
I haven't either. Yeah.
so
And again, I
uh,
don't think these even make it to the box if it wasn't for the film. Like, it's so Cool
Agreed.
World and
Agreed.
Roger Rabbit, yeah, and that's
In audience, before
yeah.
we lose you all, we are eventually going to steer this towards something a little more a little more avert at the end. So stay with us.
yeah. Ibrahim, you want to take us over to Super Nintendo or anything else on NES that we want to touch on?
I think we're good.
I
Yeah,
think we're good. Yeah.
Ibrahim. So
Go over to
we've talked
Kendo
a
Rage.
little bit of Lester. So let's pull up Kendo Rage, and apologies for the poor image selection here with a shitty eBay photo. But here we are.
Yeah, I think this is probably one of, if it makes the top three, let's say, in the SNES list, which is a hard list. We did look at it, and as Sanford said earlier, the thumbnail test, not many for the Super Nintendo, and that could be because in the 90s there was pressure on the game companies not to put out there too many sexy images. That adds to it, but Kendo Rage definitely makes it. Two beautiful chicks going at it. I mean,
There's a toy there.
yeah,
There's a what?
A toy.
a toy. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
was I was
a
I was gonna
collector who
hint at that.
we're all thinking it because there's a collector that has likened the weapons to toys of a certain kind, and
It's got a phallic shape, let's just say, but
We
it's
don't
no, it's
refer to
it's
it as
it's a beautiful
Kendo
piece.
Rage. We have a different name for it.
yeah, yeah.
It'll
You
be
swap out three letters. Yes,
yeah, it'll be down in the comments.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
yeah, Kendo Rage. It's a beautiful piece, though. Yeah, and that's
Curtis, if you're listening, shout out.
Well, not anymore. Yeah. Well, yeah. Still shout out to Curtis, but it found a new home.
yeah,
Unfortunately for Ibrahim, who would have wanted to add it to his
yeah. No, I
Super Nintendo collection.
we every. I mean, he. It's no secret who has it, but I'll try and pry it off his hands. But no, it's with a great collector, and it's a beautiful piece.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
next we can go to another one that was on my list, Super Valis. And
So
one,
we have a theme here. Somebody chased all of them down.
not all of them.
Some degenerate pervert.
I just want to say that Lester I bought from Sanford. Valis came from Dan, so you guys hunted it down. I'm just just a buyer.
And we said, hey, we are
But
too refined to keep these in our collection. Can
We do
find
not
some
want this trash.
yeah, they
This
just they gave it away.
I have a child now, Ibrahim. I can't have
Yeah.
it in my house.
we're responsible adults. We don't want this smut.
No, it's a beautiful piece by Julie Bell, but also that's Julie modeled herself in this. I asked her, she's like, yeah, that's me. I modeled myself, and yeah, it's a beautiful piece, and yeah, it's you got a bit of a nice pose, and it's nice. It passes the thumbnail test. The center focus is not on her. The overall image. It's a fantasy image, so it's a nice piece.
It's a
So
nice compromise. Like it's a little bit sexy without
Yeah,
while still being able to sell it to kids. Yeah.
yeah.
Let's
So
make some comparisons, though, shall we?
yeah, so I want
Yeah.
to pop us over to an amazing Super Famicom cover that probably Ibrahim, knowing the three of us, probably Ibrahim found it, um, of Super Strike Eagle, right?
Yep.
And so, yeah, this is not what the US got, right? And so you get one of the, 50s style pinup models, painted on the airplanes and stuff. And so, okay,
And
I get
again,
it.
you see this, you think, oh, it's a airplane shooter game. You see some bombs going off. The lady in there. I don't know what it means, but you
Well,
you have me sold. I want to play this game.
there's potentially a couple bombs on that cover.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So
what's fun about the bombs, right? Is you look at the you go to the cartridge, you say, okay, get to keep imagining, right? And I think you can kind of figure out that. I think if you take away the typography, she's definitely topless.
Yeah,
I,
so
I
the original, she's topless. Yeah,
yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of cool.
Um, but the U.S. we got something pretty similar. Oh no, we didn't. Right, and so this is my father, who's retired Air Force. He's picking up this game. Ibrahim and Dan are buying the Japanese one.
Same game.
I mean, you're
Just
not
same game.
wrong.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
Uh,
But
you
I
know,
think that's it's culture. Japan can get away with that. They had anime, manga, 80s, so they're
and you
used
know
to
what?
seeing that kind of stuff.
But it's not just culture. You know what it is like anime and manga and video games were never viewed exclusively as for children,
Hmm.
right? And so like the marketing of video games in the US, our buyers are 8, 10, 12-year olds is the mindset. But games in Japan were being made and marketed to adults, even for the
Yeah,
consoles, right? So we'll get into this almost console versus PC shift a little bit because it's clear, not just in box art, sexy box art, but just like the kinds of games were different. And the clientele for PC were older, which feeds into it. So anyway, if we kick it over to, I think, Genesis from here.
Oh, come on, we're not going to show the moobs.
Oh, we
I
can do
mean,
the
that's
moves.
that's sexy to a certain
All right.
demographic,
Are we
maybe.
starting with the European box art or you want to do the
Start no.
Genesis?
Given that we talked about the moobs, let's talk about the. Let's show the American
All
first.
right. So here's the US box art.
Hubba
Fantastic.
hubba.
Good old Greg Martin piece here. And I
I
mean,
just want to
hey,
say this looks like a really fun game. I'm just trying to analyze this image. He's on a cart. He's got a boomerang. His
It
enemy.
does
This looks brilliant.
looks fun as hell. Totally.
Yeah,
it definitely accomplishes the mission. You're going to
yeah.
sell it to 8, 10, 12-year olds, right? But in Japan, but also Europe, you know, it's no less, like you can still market to 8, 10, 12-year olds, but you've got the chick and then you've got the dinosaur slobbering over the chick.
Oh yeah. Right.
Right. So like
Yeah, the dinosaur is loving her. Look at that.
and so like if you do the thumbnail test, right, it's kind of hidden, but it's there, right? And some of this is so the artist Susumu Matsushita, he's a horny guy, right? And it comes through
Okay, I
in
hope he's not listening.
yeah, in all of his works, right? Box art, magazines, and things, just personal projects, like and some of that's Japan cultural, and so this one made it to Super Nintendo in Europe, and I mean, like, hey, I
I
love
think
the Greg
I think
Europe.
But
Europe got the better box art. I just want to say it. Not often, but Europe got the better one this time.
and what's wrong with that? Like, like to me, like there's nothing wrong with having a pretty woman, and
Yeah,
in the box. Like, I feel like the U.S. and trying to keep it totally PG, for the kids, like went too far.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't
it's
think
a
there was
woman
a
in a
reason
bathing
to.
suit, big deal.
And even that, I don't even think, sometimes you look at the anime art and you're like, this is too Japanese, this is too foreign for an American audience. The way this is rendered as an airbrushed cartoon image, I don't see why you couldn't sell it in the US. Like aesthetically. Like I think it
Yeah.
works. Um,
I think they stopped asking themselves that question, and a lot of the times, just when the box art came from Japan, the default was to redo it.
yeah.
I
Um,
must say that the US box art is shows more of what the game is sort of gonna be,
True.
so that's, yeah, it makes
You
sense.
know, that's a good
Both
point.
are very nice, to be honest, but I'm just saying,
Yeah,
like, in terms of looking at it on a shelf, you get more of what the game will be from the US box art.
agreed.
yeah.
Let's keep it moving, guys. Let's go to Genesis.
All right. So Genesis, there's not much, right? I mean, so um, Alicia Dragoon, right? Female character, bikini, right in the center, right? But small. Like in
Mhm.
the scale of the box art, even as a central character, like it's not front and center, right? Like it's almost in the background. You've got a dwarf in the front or some warriors, right?
What I love about the sword and sorcery genre, and the women that they depict, is that like these chainmail bikinis are supposed to protect you from something. Like, imagine you're in a sword fight, and all you've got protecting you is like a little something on the boobs and a little something around the waist. Like 90% of your body is like open to a sword cut.
Yeah, but
Well, yeah.
Dan, they're magical. It's a magical protection.
Oh, I
That's
was
the
thinking
whole
I
you
point.
just
mean,
I was thinking you just throw them out there for a block, but
It's plus 50 to magic defense.
yeah. So I mean, look, pretty much everything Genesis that we pulled up, it's all this sword and sorcery kind of stuff, right? I mean, so Elisa Dragoon by Greg Winters, you know, Blades of Vengeance, it's a pretty strong chin there.
Yeah,
But like, Blades of Vengeance makes the cut because she's right in the center. And really, I mean, I talked about scale and the thumbnail test, but like if you go back to Elise Dragoon, like the scale, really, the figure is much much smaller, and
yeah.
at least Blades of Vengeance, it's very clearly right in the center, the same scale as all the other characters.
And she's
Um,
wearing some leg protection. She's got a couple token bands around the thighs, and she's got a helmet.
yeah, but they
Sure.
chopped off the boots, right? We couldn't have too much, distracting from the image. Uh, and so what? Then you go. I think the other one to touch on for Genesis, right, is almost again, sword and sorcery, Boris Vallejo,
One of
Golden
the
Axe 2,
best.
right? And so
Hmm.
like, uh, yeah, right. Boris, particularly his '80s work, right? '70s, '80s, all of his work, right? He's always put female models front and center, and hey, we see it in Golden Axe 2. Probably one of the yeah.
And here, the bikini isn't even chainmail. It's just like an actual bikini. And same with the dudes, though, right? Like, they're
Yeah,
just wearing like a piece of cotton over their junk, and that's about it. I mean, they've got a metal belt to maybe glance a sword blow off. Otherwise, they're completely open to attack as well. So that's kind of interesting. But at the
And you
end of
know
the
what?
day, I get it, because if you were to go more realistic and cover the warriors in armor from head to toe, that's just not interesting to look at. It's almost like looking at three robots on the box art. So you sacrifice some realism to show a little human form.
Yeah. And I
also
think
someone
it's
like Boris, you don't get him in to paint something like that. This is his bread and butter. This is what he's going to paint.
That's right. That's
you
Yeah,
know
right.
the almost kind of a funny story on that. The opposite of this, there's a
S-
Genesis game,
Star
Star
Control.
Control, right? And so
Yeah,
Star Control, it's just a hand like
yeah,
holding an orb, and there's little pincers on the fingers or something.
yeah,
And so, outside firm hires the artist, hires Boris, and somewhere in that conversation, they ask the development team, "Hey, what do you want for the box art?" And they give, "Oh, just do the hand, and that's cool." So they didn't know they were getting Boris, right? And then Boris turns it in, and it's a cool looking image, but it's not the Boris that
yeah.
we know. And they're like, "Oh, what a missed opportunity!" Right? We had this awesome artist, and we asked him to draw, a hand with some pincers.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he still has that piece, or at least a year ago. Somebody told me, maybe, if I might be mistaken, but he might still have that piece
Hmm.
if anyone's
Yeah, I mean,
interested.
it's hey, if it's Genesis box art, that's intriguing. But Golden Axe 2 is clearly going to leave his archives first.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. I mean, this
right.
is, for me, it's one of the best,
So the
top
last,
three for sure.
oh yeah, for sexy, but also just box art for the entire system,
Yeah, yeah. No,
right? I mean,
this
like
was
it's
outside sexy, just top three in general. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's a very very strong image, right?
yeah.
So last thing we'll do one quick comparison for Genesis. And so you're looking at Burning Force by Greg Winters. At one point, I had the opportunity to buy this painting. It wasn't sexy, so I passed. Um, but if I had been shown
I
the
mean, I can mark it up for you if you like. I
no,
make some alterations.
what you need is an eraser, because you look at so this is what Greg Winters based it on, right? And so this is the Japanese arcade flyer. The U.S. arcade flyer used the exact same image, and Greg added some clothing.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there,
He was told to.
Yeah,
he was told to, right? But yes, look, I mean, on this one, her butt is closer to this closer to the point of focus. It's been shifted down. She's less of a focus, and then she's covered. So yeah, no doubt.
yeah. And so, um, I think if we kick on from here to Game Boy, it's going to be
Yeah.
really fast because there's only one image we're going to pull up.
Yeah, and it's not even North American; it's just European. For comparison's sake, beach volley GB, and to further exacerbate the lack of sexy, they've stuck the original Game Link Game Pack logo right over her butt, so you see her top half, but the bottom half is taken away, so it's just for even more so reduced. I
Like,
mean, just to draw the point that Game Boy, out of all the consoles we've talked about so far, was the one that was marketed at the youngest demographic. And man, there is nothing in that library that is even remotely sexy, apart from, again, Cool World being reused, etc. Like there's nothing to even talk about, and let's move on.
all right, so now we get the little pivot to PC box art, right? And I think it's a totally different landscape. Um, I'll kick it over to one of you guys for where you want to take us looking at the album, but clearly, PC gaming had a older demographic, right?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. The target
you,
audience, older kids, maybe late teens and beyond that. So you definitely got a bit more for PC.
Yeah, why don't we start with Leisure Suit Larry, for if for no other reason than I want to share a story. So Dan,
which
back
which
in,
which one do you want me to pull up? The first one.
doesn't matter. Yeah, sure. Pull up the first one. So back in 1987 or so, I'm at my friend Eugene's house, and Eugene's dad had a couple girly mags lying around, and also had on his computer one of the Leisure Suit Larry games. And so Eugene and I are playing it. And there was this scene that's burned into my memory, but I don't know which of the Leisure Suit Larry titles it was from, where you're going along and you're entering all these prompts and traveling along in the game. And if you entered something at some point, Larry went, I think, on kind of on top of this woman on a mattress, and then it just said like there was a big black box that said censored, and the box was going up and down, like the mattress was going up and down, like Larry was getting some. And I don't know what title that was from, but it was, in 1987 to 11 or 12-year-old Dan, that was entertaining, and kind of as sexy in quotation marks as it got at the time. And this box art here, I mean, it's putting it front and center. We've got the fishnets, And this is the remake of the first box, you said,
Yeah,
Sanford,
I
right?
think yeah, and I didn't even the first rendition of the Bucks. I didn't even put in the album. Like it just
Okay.
it wasn't quite the same visual image.
Right. And the thing I can't help but notice here, and I guess I mentioned it in the talk kind of leading up to this, was look at how far apart her legs are. Like they're they're open for business. But there's along with that, there's the different Leisure Suit Larry titles. We get a bit of kind of hinting at sexy, but sort of like guy game, for PS2 level of sexiness, like goofy and fun, not really. I mean, at the time, it sort of led you towards that, but it never really delivered.
Yeah, you get more sex out of the titles, right? Passionate
Yeah.
Patty in pursuit of the pulsating pectorals,
Hmm.
right? Um, Passionate Patty does a little undercover work, right? You get more suggestion in the titles really than you do the artwork, and I guess
Look
like
at look at look at the mud wrestling going on in that. Like she's sitting on his face in the bottom right there.
yeah,
So
uh,
yeah, that's suggestive. But you're right. Like the games, when I've tried to play a couple of them after, like they're boring. Like there's nothing happening that's even
yeah.
remotely sexy in them. Even though the whole point of them is, I guess, like from what I recall, I think you're trying to get laid is the whole point of the game, and it just never really.
But it worked. I mean, it's marketing. It worked. They made
Yeah, I
five,
mean
six of these, so
then
people
they
kept
made
on buying them.
more than that. There's from what I recall, there was at least seven, if I recall correctly.
Oh
So
yeah,
so yeah,
7, and then compilations. There was even an
right.
Xbox game. I mean, there's
Yeah,
a lot of them, and yeah, a lot of different artists did them too. Just from really bringing it back to our focus on the art and stuff. But like this next one here, this is a Mick McGinty. Um, I think Stephen Perringer did a couple. This might be one of Perringer's.
Yeah, I think
There's
so.
another Perringer
Or
one that really is. It's kind of weird. It's because it's just Leisure Shoot Larry at a microphone with no women or sex appeal at all, and
that's a compilation. Yeah,
yeah, which
that
is
one.
like
Yeah,
it's almost doesn't represent what you want to sell for the game. But maybe by the time you're making the
right.
compilation, right, people know what they are.
And
Um,
to your point about the suggestive titles, Love for Sale, SAIL,
yeah,
you
that's
know,
funny.
bump.
I didn't get it till you said it out loud. Like I typed it and I read it and it just went over my head. Yeah. So
Oh, and look at that now with Scratch and Sniff.
I don't want to know, man.
I know, right? Totally.
Because when you
You
have
can't say
a
that about Earthbound scratches.
no,
They're
yeah,
only
Yeah,
this.
yeah, no, that's
person,
fine. But
right?
here,
So
I'm not sure
yeah,
what. Yeah,
and
what's the scent there?
Earthbound scratch and sniff was like booger smell or pizza,
No,
right? They were
pizza,
like was
pizza. Yeah.
pizza, okay, right? And so like I don't want to know what the Leisure Suit Larry scratch and sniff is. So look, but it's not sexy. It's suggestive, even though that's the whole theme of the game, right? And so like where I think you kind of get there, the spell casting games, right? And I don't even know. I mean, I know about these. I don't, but like,
It,
do people
it,
even know about these games? I have no idea.
yeah, and sorry, just on the last image because my mind went there. The back of the boat says Al Low, and I was trying to think, what is that? Is that just a reference to like aloe when you're suntanning? Like
No,
that's
no.
weak if that's what
I
that
think I
is.
think. Oh, actually, I don't know. I thought
Like, is
Leisure
that
Shoot
like aloe?
Larry's.
Like
I thought Leisure Shoot Larry's name was Allo,
aloe?
but
Oh, I don't know.
that doesn't
Okay,
make sense.
let's
I
not
don't know.
let's not confuse things. Okay.
So, yeah, but the spellcasting games are a different beast. Um,
It's like a dorky Harry Potter that had a couple of hot girls show up, and he's, you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
he's about to expelliarmus the bikinis away or something.
and you know what's funny? So you get the same trope for spellcasting 201, right? But by the time you get to 301, they just do away with the sorcerer, right?
Straight to
who
it.
who needs the
They're
sorcerer?
like, all right, we've arrived at the third game in this series. We know why you're buying it, right?
You know what the spell casting is here, because this is not entirely pre surgical enhancements, but the spell casting is how those things are staying that upright. That's the spell people are interested in.
Yeah,
Also, I love how they're like VGA 256 colors.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Hey, it beats 8-bit. Um, you know, so uh, we gotta. You guys have the album up in the background or from memory. Are there other places we want to go on PC? I know we've got some Atari and some pinball. We'll touch on. Um,
There was that Lewis
Yeah,
Royal
let's look.
yeah,
Pace game
Let's
over,
look at game over.
and then
Yeah,
we'll call it a game over on PC.
deal.
yeah. Luis Royo, fantastic artist.
It's a
Yeah,
nice
brilliant
top.
artist. I mean,
Yeah.
look, they have a lot of protection, headgear, and all sorts. So
Well,
So
this
Ibrahim,
is this is sci-fi.
the
I
obvious question is, how long have you been searching for this?
I contacted the artist Dan, and
No!
he sold this a long time ago.
Somebody else beat
um,
you to it.
yeah, someone else beat me to it. Long time.
Yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah.
I think it was sold like a year after he painted it. And there's also Game Over too, but it's not as nice as this one,
Yeah.
and it has quite a following in Europe.
And it was Europe only.
I think so. I mean, it was on the Amiga, Commodore, Atari ST, and all the other
Yeah.
home
So
computer
so
games.
so if we're looking at this image, so okay, so she's got that string threading across her chest and whatever, and then when it goes up to the shoulders, it's got a wider strap. So is that wider strap there to make sure that it's not pressing down on her shoulders, that it's comfortable? So we're worried about shoulder comfort, but we're not worried about getting stabbed in the heart. It's kind of funny.
Well, she's got a bodyguard, or she's kidnapped. I'm not sure which.
I mean, that's why you have to play the game to protect her, Dan. She's she doesn't have any armor, so that's the whole point of the game.
All
Protect
right.
her.
All
All
right,
right.
fair
I
enough.
think
Fair
I've not
enough.
even looked at the game. I don't know what the game is,
All right,
but
let's move on. Let's
All
move
right.
on.
Let's
Let's keep it
let's
moving.
let's blow through Atari just really to touch on it, right? And so these are three titles from the publisher Mystique. They're clearly marketed adult video cartridges. These are probably sold only in video stores, something like that.
Yeah, yeah, places where adult videos were sold.
And so the NES had a couple of those, Peekaboo Poker, Bubble Bath Babes, and so, but those were all photos on the game boxes, right? And so at least the Atari ones, at least it's not really teeing much up. I mean, there are painted images, and I'll just kind of hit left and right on the.
It's fun. It's funny on that one that the whole like this game is a bit of a dirty game, and the whole selling point is, well, sex really, and yet you've covered up the butt with the big logo. You know, like
Yeah,
it's kind of weird. Like, are you selling it or are you not selling it?
yeah,
Anyway,
they only kind of go
you're selling it in a
down.
porn store. What do you need to cover up the butt for? I mean, people are buying hardcore porn at the same place that they're buying that cartridge. And by the way, can we? Yeah, thank you, because
Yeah,
that one just,
I
like, the
know.
bachelorette party one burns my eyes.
As soon as
But so
I process the words, I said, "Yeah, let's move off that one."
yeah. Custer's Revenge. This is a well-known game. Like, the point of the game is that, well, you're trying to get to Pocahontas and give her
Poker.
so, you're trying to give her something you've got. And so the game, like the gameplay screenshots on this are more I mean, apart from his ugly naked ass, the gameplay screenshots are more sort of titillating than the box art. Like, you actually see, like, he's very at attention when he's trying to get over to the other side with her and he's dodging the arrows, and so it's quite
Yeah.
something. But
No,
yeah, the box art itself kind of ho hum by comparison.
I think the one that does make me laugh the most though is "Beat 'em and Eat 'em."
That
Yeah.
title is quite something.
um, and so hey, it's what's weird about these, right? Like, I don't know how much the box art really sells it, right? Like, I think if you're the kind of buyer already in the video store, already in that section, like, how much does the box need to sell you? I don't know.
I think it grabs your attention, and then you'll look at the back to see the
Yeah,
actual, what is it,
That's
yeah.
right. That's right. And heads up, she's not licking an ice cream cone. Am I right?
But Dan,
You
I
know,
see the ice cream cone right there.
but right, and yet she's running around trying to catch jizz in the game. So
Oh, that's what it is.
it's literally what it is, from what I recall. Again, I've never played it, but I've seen screenshots because I used to want to copy this at one time. From what I recall, there's like literally jizz coming from the sky, and you have to go and catch it.
So
And
when I
it's called beat 'em and eat 'em. I guess you're eating
Right.
it,
Yeah,
right?
when
So
I was
yeah,
in high school, a friend of mine, God, I wish I could remember the name, but he was really talented. He programmed his own games on the TI-83 calculators. So you'd buy these calculators for the more advanced math courses, but you could get programs. Someone made like a rudimentary Pokemon on TI-83.
wow,
It's really, really impressive stuff. There have been 15 or 20 Pokemon to catch. And so my friend, far more talented at programming than I ever was, made one. And God, I wish I could, the name was so comical and catchy, but basically you're using the bracket as a mouth and you're, catching loads going across the screen. And but it was hilarious and it was actually fun, like really basic but entertaining game mechanics. But God, I wish I could remember the name because it was genuinely funny. All right,
that's
so
great. The
here's
furthest I ever got with that was typing 80085 or whatever the number is
Yeah.
into my calculator and turning it upside down. Ah, boobs, boobs.
boobless, I think so. Oh no, just you had boobs. Sorry, other people found ways to add extra.
Yeah, you
Add
could
it 7 and
variations on
3, and
that.
yeah.
Variations on that. Yeah, but that was the basic idea.
Alrighty, Dan, let's close it out on your pinball territory. Where you
All
want to
right.
take us?
Yeah, well, it's the hobbies pinball territory, Sanford. So, we've talked about demographics and we've talked about the fact that, PC was marketed to an older audience. So there was more sort of sexually overt images. Definitely the case with pinball as well. I mean, that got its start in arcades, mainly kind of adult oriented. And, so there's a lot of titles with like overt innuendo. Like there's a title called Scared Stiff, which is an Elvira title. And the stiff is an obvious, innuendo. There's titles like Truck Stop, where the waitresses on the cover have, they're well endowed, um, and that consists to this day. Like in this day, there's a title that was came out in the last year or two called Big Juicy Melons, and there's literally like a girl in cowboy boots and little cut off pair of jean shorts or something, holding two watermelons in front of her chest for the innuendo. Like it's still from the 70s to today. It's still kind of a part and parcel of pinball.
Do you think part
And
of that is that like I mean, that it was then and today? Do you think a lot of the pinball buyers today are the same people that were playing pinball a couple decades ago, or do you see new people coming in the hobby?
oh, there's definitely been a huge resurgence. Like it's never, I don't know if it's ever really been, and certainly in terms of the home, it's never been more popular. There's tons of people out there with lots of machines in their home, or with big kind of private collections of pinball machines. There's maybe less of it in the bars and arcades because that's just not as prevalent as it used to be, but there's still some of that too. And retro barcades and pinball arcades and stuff have started springing up, and you go and you can order some food and get some beer and play some pinball while you do it. So I think it's just there was never the preoccupation about having to worry about minors, because like pinball was illegal at one time in some areas because of its association to gambling. And so it was never trying to be kid friendly.
Mm.
And so the piece that you've pulled up on the screen, Sanford, and stealing my thunder a little bit, because I was going to show the original here for show and tell, but that's okay. Is something called Bride of Pinbot. Hopefully, we can see that okay on screen.
Yeah.
And apart from the fact that the image is kind of sexualized with this sexy robot, the long legs and the curves and everything, the big features, the big eyes, big lips. Apart from that, apart from the image itself, the whole point of this game, if you play the pinball, is to turn her on. Like, if you hit the shots in a row, she calls out suggestively. The lights start to come on. It's literally like you're kind of bringing her to orgasm if you hit the shots right. So, like in terms of the gameplay, it is overtly sexual. And anyway, I love this piece. It's a John Yowsey piece, but based on a design by Python Angelo. So a little bit of both styles come in, because Angelo liked that facial style, but John painted it. And whereas when John was left to his own devices for the sequel to this, the third game in the series, Jackpot, which I have behind me, you could see that he went with a more sort of feminine face, like softer features. Um, and John and I had a discussion about this, that he kind of based his Bride on the work of Gil Elvgren, who was a very famous 1950s artist, unbelievable artist.
Yeah.
And so that was his inspiration for the character, when he didn't have sort of Python's direction on where to go with it, and was able to do his own thing on it. So I love both of them. They're wonderful. I love John Yossi stuff. And so that's kind of the show and tell for today. But
And so
yeah,
one,
I love the long legs on both of them.
and so Dan, both of these actually, I mean, what one of the things about pinball paintings is they're huge, right? Are they 40 inches across? What are
No, I think I haven't measured, but it wouldn't be 40, more like 30 or 32, I think, for
yeah.
these.
And so yeah, but the back glass, right, are big pieces. The paintings are
Yes,
nice and full and detailed. And so random straight thought for me, is there any relation between Jackbot and Pinbot?
exactly. They're the
Right.
same franchise. So
Right.
Pinbot is the first in the franchise, then Bride, then Jackbot.
Okay. And so then you bring it full circle and you bring it back to the console stuff, and it's Pinbot that gets, art reused or redone a little
Yeah,
bit for the NES, right? So
yeah.
NES has Pinbot, which is just the colorful robot and that imagery, but you're not getting the Bride of Pinbot and
Yeah,
Jackbot.
but in fairness, even on the pinball version of Pinbot, you only have the robot on that one. Bride isn't introduced yet, and I think the Bride game comes out around 1990, and the Pinbot console version I think was out already.
Okay.
So just on a timeline basis, like I know where you're going with it,
Yeah.
but on a timeline basis, I don't think Bride had even been introduced yet.
Yeah. But there was no Super Nintendo game, right? Like I
True.
guess it had its little moment, and maybe just there were other pinball games, or sorry, other pinball games for the Super Nintendo, but they weren't even
Not a
based on
lot.
actual machines. I think, right? Pin Dream or something.
Pinball
Uh,
fantasies or something.
yeah, something.
There's there's not a lot of them, yeah.
And so as we kind of close out today, right? I mean, we kind of went through some of the consoles, PC, pinball.
Hold on. Let's go through one more pinball, please. Can we
All
bring
right,
up Viper?
there you go.
So there's nothing suggestive here. You have a lady robot with a very small chest, wrapped around a snake. Now, why they chose a snake, I have no idea. I don't think there's anything there whatsoever. But yeah, this is going back to, I think this is like 1980 or so, 79, 80, 81. And so, yeah, going back 40, 50 years, it was already, quite sexualized. And even to the modern day, like we talked about, it remains kind of a selling point. So there's just never been any, it's funny, there's never been any of the same sort of prudishness when it comes to pinball.
Yeah, and I almost wonder. I mean, so clearly NES was a in the U.S. in the United States. NES very much marketed to children, and they started with the pixelated covers on the games to make clear this is a game, this is for kids. That separation, like Atari overselling what was in the game, right? When we look retrospectively, right, that you needed the paintings on the Atari to sell the games, but there were a lot of bad games too in this whole crash narrative for Atari, and so NES makes it clear, hey, these are kid games, and just that very different part of the console history from pinball, right, in bars, like you
Yeah.
said.
And they might have just been scared too. Like, look, the industry had just crashed. When you're going into that, you don't want to make any waves. You don't want to get any bad press. You know what I mean? Like, it's safe to go safe. And at that point in time, they needed to go safe. And then it seems like they've just followed suit, like all the way back. Like, one of the things we've talked about is that things really haven't changed. Like the lack of sexy in NES, that's still there in terms of a lack of sexy in like modern console box art. Whereas with PC and pinball, that hasn't changed either. That's not as prudish.
Yeah, it's some of it I think is America, and so like Grand Theft Auto being real careful to get the mature rating and not the adults only rating, because then you can't sell it in Walmart and Target and those places. We're focused on original artwork, right? So we're looking at what has illustrations. So you know there's a bunch of stuff with photos that we're not really counting. Now all the digital stuff.
Hmm.
We also didn't really dip into Japan because there is a whole bunch of weird
Yeah,
in
I
the
mean, we
Japan
wouldn't
box
be
art
doing a top
offerings,
three. We'd be doing a
right?
top 100.
Right, and it's just dirty and different.
Yeah.
We see it a little bit with the Super Strike Eagle for Super Famicom, but there's whole
Hmm.
games that are just whole genres, right? The whole romance dating genre just doesn't really exist outside of Japan. There's tons and tons of games in that niche, and a lot that
But
are more direct than
yeah,
that
it's
too.
but it's as you said though. It has a lot to do with the ratings, and they it allows them to sell the game to to a younger audience, and that means parents can buy it. And what would a parent buy a sexy box art or something that looks a bit covered up? So that also has a lot to do with it. I just remembered, I've got this dig and spike volleyball Super Nintendo, what's it called, box
Unused.
art, unused box art, and that one has like, I think four girls playing volleyball, but that didn't make it. That was by Lee McLeod, and they recommissioned and re-illustrated it, and to have two women and two guys playing it. And I'm sure that was to do with, oh, this is too much sex appeal, or so they just turned it down a notch. But yeah,
Yeah, because that unpublished one, they are wearing sort of, what do you call it? Not tankini, like the one piece, but suggestive sort of
yeah,
swimsuits.
swimsuit, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
like showing a fair bit.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, some of that's probably too of like uh, not that it's not like a Barbie game, right? But if you think your consumer is young boys, and like, do they if
yeah,
like,
I hear
do you,
you.
oh I want to be the I want to be the
Yeah.
guy playing volleyball.
Yeah,
I don't want to play
exactly.
a game with a
Well,
bunch
that's
of
the
girls in
mindset.
it.
Yeah, yeah, of a 8-year-old kid. They're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm that guy. I'm playing." So it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So I mean, I think that's kind of bringing us full circle here, right? But I mean, we kind of jokingly started the topic because if you're looking at console, if you're trying to actually buy this artwork and add it to your collection, if you're a comic art collector, if you're a fantasy art collector, if you're a movie art collector, especially movie art, I mean, there's so many like home video releases in Europe and all around the world. There's just so many more sexy options. Like if you want to go in that direction with your collection, you've got options in all those art hobbies. But for game art, you really don't, especially if you keep it to box art, right? If you start going magazine art and other areas, it's still pretty limited. But if you really look in box art, your options are few, and Ibrahim has them all.
Well, maybe. Let's play a game just before we wrap it up. If you guys can choose one of one sexy box art, it could be something we mentioned, we covered, or something we didn't mention. Uh, where would you go?
Super Strike Eagle.
Okay.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Like from a collecting point of view, from an image
No,
point of
just
view,
it's
what are we
just
talking about?
one you'd like to own. You can never sell it. It's just one you have. It's that's it. You own it.
Gotcha, gotcha. Honestly, in terms of the console stuff, really nothing that we talked about, like from a sexy point of view, anyway, is it does anything for me. To be perfectly honest, so I would be looking at something along the lines of PC or pinball, where you can kind of get into that, like maybe Elvira and the Party Monsters, as a pinball piece, is a cool one and a cool game. So I might go something along those lines, or this Viper that we're looking at right here, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Ibrahim,
Um,
how are you
I,
going
I
to close this out?
yeah, you know what? I'll probably go Who Framed Roger Rabbit because
Yeah, that's a good one.
it's brilliant, and it's got the movie tie-in. I have a Cool World piece already. So, it's just one of those cells, but it's a beautiful piece. But yeah, I'd go Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Cool. Hey, it's been fun, guys. I think we've already kind of batted around a topic for episode 11, and so we'll figure out when to schedule it and flesh it out. But hopefully, more episodes coming to you guys soon. And for anyone that's still listening at this point, hey, thank you. Find our
Good
collectors
night, you
group.
degenerates, for listening to this.
Yeah, you found us if you're still here.
Yeah, yeah. If you're still here, that
originalvideogameart.com.
says something about you.
Hit us a like, a follow. Follow our YouTube page, Facebook group. You can find us Original Video Game Art Collectors. And yeah, take care.
All
See you
righty.
on the next
Awesome.
one.
Adios, everybody.
See you guys.
Take care.
Bye.